Creature Commandos has wrapped up its first season with a climactic finale, and most viewers seem pretty satisfied. It's got humor, it's got heart, it's got action. But this isn't just another superhero story. No, this is in fact our first real look at what the future of the DC Universe will look like under the leadership of longtime friends James Gunn and Peter Safran. A future where animation, live action, and apparently video games are all connected under one cohesive umbrella of synergy. Creature Commandos, of course, is just one of many animated projects that exist for DC Comics, a franchise mostly known for its headlining heroes like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash. And these characters even make small appearances in Creature Commandos, which, despite being animated, is part of the greater DCEU with its live-action films. After years of controversial or even outright hated movies, many thought the franchise was dying, but with James Gunn at the helm, some fans have been falling in love with the DC again. Welcome back to Cartoon Universe. My name is Tony Bones, and this is my first video on the channel. I'll be helping out with superhero reviews and theories, so if you want more content like this, please like and subscribe. The DCU is a place where monsters aren't just real, they're government assets. In the original Suicide Squad films, humans and monsters were used as agents by the government for special missions. Creature Commandos takes place shortly after this, in a time where these squads have been outlawed. But these laws only apply to humans. With that in mind, Creature Commandos follows a squad made up entirely of monsters. The fun of the show is that after its season premiere, each episode focuses on one of these monsters, or Creature Commandos. The season has an ongoing story of the gang's mission in the land of Bakulistan, under the direction of General Richard Flagg, but each episode flashes back to a different character's life before being imprisoned. Through these flashbacks, we learn about how these people became known as monsters, and the way they were treated because of it, often unfairly. The show uses a similar format to Lost or Once Upon a Time. In these shows, roughly half of each episode is focused on establishing a story in the past using flashbacks. This gives the audience dramatic insight into the motivations of the characters, an insight not even other characters around them might have. It started in episode 2 with The Bride, a monster made from the body parts of dead women to be the bride of Frankenstein, with this Frankenstein man stalking her for centuries after her escape. We also got the backstory of Weasel, a character from the previous Suicide Squad film by James Gunn, who went from more of a joke character to a tragically imprisoned animal who just wants to be a good pet basically, but gets treated like a monster when trying to save children. It's not just that the backstories were amazing, but they were used to emphasize the most dramatic moments from each character's journey in the present, as they try to complete missions and gain back parts of their freedom. And that felt like something the original Suicide Squad was lacking. In this film, the characters' backstories, even the most dramatic moments, were given outright in an opening montage of quick flashbacks. It made most of the characters feel forced and their actions not truly motivated by what they'd been through, at least as far as the audience could emotionally infer with such quick exposition. And it's because of changes like this that James Gunn has been given complete control over DC in this strange soft reboot we're in. But it didn't start with Creature Commandos. Instead, it started with 2016's Suicide Squad, a film that I have seen far more times than I care to admit. I mean, this movie was on non-stop in the 2010s. You don't even understand. If I asked my siblings right now what their favorite movie was, they would say Suicide Squad. That's how often this movie was on in our household. But for me, I just couldn't get into it. With its parody dialogue, its relentless top 40 soundtrack that just never worked for me. I really tried, but Suicide Squad for me was just a dud. As for the story, its premise is pretty similar to Creature Commandos, but it's stripped of anything resembling emotional depth. The characters were hollow, forgettable. Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn is the only thing that you can really take away from it. But beyond her, it just seemed like DC just did not care about the characters or the film. Something that was unfortunately true for a lot of their films at the time. After Zack Snyder's step back in 2017, DC entered an experimental phase. To this point, Snyder had led the DCEU with the Superman film, Man of Steel, followed by its sequel, Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice. The Justice League film he was directing would have finished the trilogy surrounding Superman, while building out the bigger DCEU around him with other characters. However, this all fell apart when Zack Snyder had to leave his work for tragic personal reasons, and Joss Whedon was hired to take over. Joss Whedon was hired to finish Justice League, but to make it a bit more like Marvel, as he had set the tone for the MCU with his unique humor in the early Avengers films. But unfortunately, it just didn't come together for fans of Justice League. This led to the Snyder Cut actually being released on Max. The idea here was that it would be a return to Snyder's original vision, but it was seen as flawed, and fans were still unhappy. after the failure of Justice League, DC felt like it was going through an identity crisis. Some films, like Shazam and the wildly underrated Birds of Prey, would find success by leaning into humor, but others like Wonder Woman 1984 would fail trying to do the same, ultimately struggling to recapture the magic of its predecessor. Because of that, the DC Universe seemed to drift, lost without a captain, until James Gunn came aboard. It was July of 2018, and while DC found itself smothered in Snyder Cut discourse, James Gunn was riding high for their biggest competitor. His work on Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 had turned an obscure Marvel property into a cornerstone of the MCU, and himself into a heralded blockbuster filmmaker. But everything changed overnight when old tweets resurfaced, consisting of controversial and offensive jokes that Gunn had made years earlier. Despite Gunn having publicly apologized for these tweets long before they resurfaced, the backlash prompted Disney to fire him from the third Guardians of the Galaxy film. This decision sent shockwaves through Hollywood, dividing fans and creators alike. Many saw Disney's move as reactionary, given Gunn's history of accountability. Gunn's firing even prompted public support from his Guardians of the Galaxy cast, who openly advocated for his reinstatement. David Bautista, who plays Drax the Destroyer, even threatened to leave the franchise if Gunn wasn't rehired. Gunn stood at a professional crossroads. He was a filmmaker who spent years reshaping the comic book movie landscape, only to find himself abruptly cut off from the universe he helped build. What seemed destined to be the start of a legacy now teetered on the brink of an abrupt and untimely end. Enter Warner Brothers. Seeing the fallout, they quickly moved to secure Gunn's talents, handing him the keys to a property that was right up his alley. A property that I had hoped to never hear from again. Suicide Squad. Or I guess I should say, The Suicide Squad. Gunn was given free rein to write and direct, to not make the film a direct sequel, and to do whatever the hell he wanted with the characters. When asked why he wanted to make this film, beyond the creative freedom he was given, Gunn responded by saying this: "I loved writer John Ostrander's original run on the Suicide Squad. The basic elements of that squad were what excited me. That it was a group of B-rate supervillains who were used as human fodder in Black Ops missions by the US government. The idea of putting these sad sack supervillain soldiers in this huge war film was exciting to me." The Suicide Squad wasn't just a success, it was a reclamation. A property once dismissed and disparaged became, in James Gunn's hands, something vital, something alive. His sharpest move was bringing back characters from the wreckage: Harley Quinn, Rick Flag, Captain Boomerang, Amanda Waller, and giving them weight, dimension, and consequence. And for those who don't know, this is the son of Richard Flag Sr., the one he was talking about in Creature Commandos, the one whose death deeply affected him. Following his success with the Suicide Squad, Warner Brothers let Gunn get into TV with the series Peacemaker, which spun off John Cena's character from the Suicide Squad. The acclaim surrounding Peacemaker caught the attention of Peter Girardi at Warner Brothers, who approached James Gunn with an offer to venture into animation. Gunn, true to form, leaned into familiar territory by focusing even more on the formula started in the Suicide Squad, a team of outsiders handpicked by Amanda Waller for morally dubious missions. The show would pick up directly after the Peacemaker Season 1 finale, a moment that left Waller exposed and unable to operate unchecked. Gunn wrote all 7 episodes of Creature Commandos in a matter of weeks, and it was during this period, in 2022, that he was named co-head of DC Studios. This gave him control over the mediums of film, TV, and animation. And not just for the Suicide Squad world he had been focusing on, but for all of DC's characters. With this new authority, Gunn set out to build the new DCU, where characters would be portrayed by the same actors in both animation and live-action formats, creating a seamless continuity across all their content. Gunn's vision materialized in the form of Gods and Monsters, the first phase of his new DC universe. And at the forefront of this new beginning was Creature Commandos, the inaugural project of a world redefined. But what is this new canon? When the DCEU started under Zack Snyder, everything was considered part of its canon, up until the 2023 Flash film. In this movie, multiverse technology makes it so the elements of Zack Snyder's films would still have continuity to the new films, which would go from being called the DCEU to the DCU. This allowed Gunn to change some aspects of the DC movies while retaining the canon he enjoyed, particularly from the Suicide Squad subplot. When pressed in an interview with Collider about what remains canon from the previous DCEU, Gunn offered a pointed yet enigmatic response. If it's referenced in Creature Commandos, it's canon. Events from Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad are still connected, but Gunn has framed them as unreliable memories of what has transpired in this evolving universe. And from here, Gunn will continue to keep what he likes and change what he doesn't, as he releases his new Superman film, replacing Henry Cavill as Superman and introducing more classic elements of Superman's lore, like his dog Krypto. It's a bold vision that feels like a proper evolution of the previous regime, a pivot towards embracing DC's vast roster, rather than forcing them into a mold of whatever happens to be culturally in vogue. Creature Commandos exemplifies this evolution. Now that the show has been released in its entirety, I can't help but wonder how it will resonate with those who arrived late to the party. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts on Creature Commandos down below, and if you want to talk more about cartoons and superheroes, join us at the Cartoon Universe Discord server. Links in the pinned comment down below, and you'll see more of me soon. See you next time.
Man, I do love running, especially when it's away from women who are madly in love with me. But one thing I never run from is another man. Well, if it isn't my arch rival, Racer Rabbit. Shady the Bat, you're here for the magic crystal as well?